All right, so today's topic is society in transition. Oof. Today's topic is society in transition, and it's specifically talking about the cause and effects of changing policy debates and the role of the federal government over time in the United States. So with that being said, let's move on and begin. Went too far ahead. So first key point. All right. In the 1960s, conservatives challenged liberal laws and court decisions and perceived moral and cultural decline. So conservatives in the United States from the 60s, 70s, and a little later see moral decline and cultural decline. They see this as a problem. They also want to limit the role of the federal government and have really strong anti-communist foreign policy. They want all these things to happen at once. This is what the 60s and 70s conservative is after. And for reasons we'll get into, they have not been getting what they want, right? I'll give you about a minute and a half on this and then we'll move forward. So yeah, guys, about that computer science, like I said, I will try to find out some answers and get you guys a little bit of relief in that realm during my meeting today. Hopefully something comes of that. I will see what I can do. Appreciate the info you guys are sending. About a minute on the clock. By the way, I know yesterday's class was a little random because of the in-person lesson that was just kind of recorded. Let me know if that worked or if that wasn't too good. I couldn't really tell. It was all happening really fast. Might have to do more formal stuff for tomorrow. Like that, it was fun. It was all too, see, so I got some too fast, some it was fun. What I can try to do also is slow it down because I know we did the whole thing in like 20 minutes and that's a little too quick. Quiet. Oh, so you can hear it to an extent? Okay. See, this is stuff good to know. By the way, if you are going to check out that video and it is bad audio, please send me a Teams message because I'll re-record it so you can at least hear the explanations a little better. Because there's only so much I can shout with a mask on from far away. So I just trying something new there. Hopefully it worked out for y'all. But time is up, so let's move forward. Let's talk about conservatives and liberals. So the mic was louder, would have been pretty good. Okay, good to know. Maybe I'll just bring a mic next time and talk into that. So from 45 to 80, a lot of the gains being made were for the liberal causes. Things like Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, the women's liberation movement, the civil rights movement to an extent. Steel Series, yeah, the Steel Series. Got to break out the Steel Series. It'll happen. These are all liberal positives, right? Liberal movements. These are all led by liberal politicians for the most part, right? And conservatism's main win, their crowning achievement, their big victory, right? The big kahuna will come in 1980 when Ronald Reagan's elected president. But that won't have, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. What's important to note is that in the 60s and 70s, conservatives are really struggling with the times. They're falling behind. They don't like what they're seeing. And they're doing things like protesting Vietnam, and conservatives don't like that. Why are you protesting the war? They see things like family structure being threatened, their view of traditional family structure, because women are doing things like going to work or going to school or not wanting to be housewives, right? And that's a threat to the traditional family structure that, generally speaking, most conservatives of the time tended to follow, right? And also for the Southern conservatives, this is mainly for the Southerners, I cannot stress this enough, gains in the civil rights movement were also seen as no. And I got to point out, right, there are different levels of conservative. The reason I say this is because we're talking about the origins of what's getting into current events. So a lot of these things we'll talk about today, you can still feel them in today's politics. And it's really important that you guys know that when I speak about this stuff, I'm using the historical lens, but most importantly, it's all generalizations. There are varying degrees of everything, right? A conservative in 2020 isn't the same as a conservative in 1960 or 70, but there are always levels of extremism, right? Just like how if you looked hard enough, you will find somebody who's fairly racist in 2020. It was even easier to find someone that was fairly racist in 1960, right? So keep that in mind. So even things like the civil rights that we all know, right? hey, this is a good thing, right? Or like women's liberation, that we all know this is a good thing, right? There were people who were critics of it then. There's not too many people that are critics of it now, but even now you can find critics of that stuff. So of course there are people that are critics of it then. I'll give you about a minute on the clock for the slides, and then we will move forward. About 30-ish seconds left on the clock. And again, guys, if there's questions or you have anything to add, let me know in the chat, and we can, or if you want to clarify something, if you have a clarifying question, feel free to ask it. Today's going to get fairly modern. In fact, I want you to try to draw connections to the stuff we're talking about right now in modern day, because you will be able to find them. I promise you that. Got 10 seconds. Okay, so let's talk about extreme conservatism or extreme conservatives. There's going to be 2 slides of this stuff, and believe it or not, hey, extremists, they exist, they're out there, right? And their beliefs, to call them goofy almost seems a little silly, but they're kind of goofy. So the YAF, who we talked about last time, right, that young college group that's conservative, were very, 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 a big part of their platform was to champion the campaign of Barry Goldwater for president in 1964. Barry Goldwater supported the ideas of something that was called the New Right. And the New Right was a conservative group who they were really anti-liberalism. So anything that was considered liberal for the time, right, any Lyndon Johnson things, anything like that, they did not like. They were proud of their religion. They wore their religion like a badge of honor. We love the Jesus and we are proud of it. They're openly populist. They will tell people what they want and be like, that's what we're here for. And probably the biggest thing that they have, and the reason I consider their belief structure to be really goofy, is that they're very anti-egalitarian, meaning that they believe that men and women have their own spheres of influence, which means that they believe in what? Like, chat, what am I talking about when I say women and men have their own spheres, their own sections? What's another way you could word that? Or what's an example of what they believe in? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. And if you don't know, then say, I don't know. But what do y'all think? No clue. A couple of I don't knows. Anti-egalitarian. So basically, when you're anti-egalitarian, you basically, so in a nutshell, you believe in traditional gender roles, right? If you're a member of the New Right, as it's called, they believe men go to work, men come home, women stay home, work on the housewife stuff. That 50s traditional imprisonment lifestyle that we talked about the other day when we were talking about the women's liberation movement and stuff, that's kind of that's their game. They like that. They kind of tend to lean into that stuff. Maybe not as extreme, but they very much believe that, like, hey, women should be at home. Men should go to work. And that's how it should be. And again, these are extreme groups. I cannot stress enough. This is an extreme group. This is not the normal conservative of the 60s. These people are extreme in their beliefs. And I'll give you about another 40 seconds on this slide, and then we'll move on to the next slide, and we'll meet some crazier people. Or actually, you know what I'll say? I don't think these people are necessarily crazy. They're extreme. But the next slide, the people on there are crazy. Actually, that's it. Let's move on. So the John Birch Society. Real quick, yes or no, do you guys know what QAnon is? Have you guys heard of QAnon? Just a real quick yes or no from a few people. No? No. No. Okay. So don't worry about QAnon. That's a modern version. I consider it kind of a modern version of the John Birch Society. But the John Birch Society is a group of conservatives that are very anti-communist, that preach limited government. But one of the things that they do, and they do this often, is they basically create these massive conspiracy theories about the issues of the current day. And they are very adamant about the conspiracies that they create. One thing that they oppose, for example, it's very famous and very ridiculous, is they oppose putting fluoride in water supplies. Fluoride, by the way, is like a medicine, a chemical, and like it's in toothpaste and it's in all stuff. It's really good for your teeth and it's really good for you. And it's good if it's in water, but they oppose putting fluoride in water because they called it mass medicine that was meant to keep us complacent, right? That says conservative, it should say complacent, meaning that they thought the government was trying to like mind control people with fluoride. That's legit what they thought, and that's legit what they preach. They're pretty crazy in that regard. They're so ridiculous. There's literally a Parks and Rec episode about them wanting to put fluoride in the water and a bunch of crazy people being like, no, don't. And these people like lived that. It's a real thing. So I'll give you a quick, less than a minute on here, and then we'll move forward. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Oh, pitches to government spies. Yeah, the John Birch Society very much believes that birds are drones and that they're all government spies. All right, let's go to move forward. Let's talk about key point 2. Again, I'll give you about a minute and a half for here when I am finished reading. In the 1970s, there was a growing clashes between conservatives and liberals happened all over the place. Social issues, cultural issues, power of the federal government, race movements, and individual rights. Every single thing that could be argued about between conservatives and liberals was argued about. And this starts in the 70s. So I'll give you about a minute and a half for that key point, and then we'll move forward. About 12 seconds. All right, let's go to move forward. So let's talk about more moderate conservatives of the 60s and 70s. Right now, these moderate beliefs probably don't sound too moderate to us, but they are still considered moderates of their time. One is this guy, William F. Buckley, who had a magazine called the National Review. And one thing that I think is pretty positive about the National Review is that he called out extremists within his own political ideology, right? So he's a conservative, But he called out other conservatives when they were being crazy and extreme, like the John Birch Society. When they're like, hey, don't drink fluoride, it's mind control. He's like, what? Don't be dumb, John Birch Society. Like, that's not true, right? The birds aren't drones. Like he called out people who had extreme, crazy ideas. And that's not common in a lot of political ideologue ways, right? That is something that nowadays I think we need a lot more of. But in general, that's something that typically never really happens. But he does it. Growth of the religious right happens here too. So prior to the 60s and 70s, religion and government and politics and stuff, they weren't mingled together. They didn't use it as policy. They didn't use it to inform policy. But the religious right starts to grow during this time period. A lot of religious people see the moral and cultural changes that they don't like and say we need to apply religion to government and to policy. On top of that, conservative Christians will be a major part of this, and especially the Roe v. Wade decision. The Roe v. Wade decision was the one that legalized abortion in the United States. And it'll be so controversial to Christians in the United States that it'll make Catholics and Protestants team up. Like something that's literally never been done for hundreds of years, Catholics and Protestants working together, but they will do it to form against the Roe v. Wade decision because they don't agree with it on that level. I'll give you about a minute and a half on this slide, and then we'll move forward. About 50 seconds left on the clock. All right, that is time. Let's go to move forward. So let's talk about the religious right as it is known. Basically, the religious right, something that we should, something that's not new now. It's fairly common now, at least it was for a while. But the idea that religion, and specifically Christian religion, and conservative politics are melded together and kind of intertwined, and it's hard to tell them apart. That is a thing because of the religious right. And this guy, Jerry Falwell, who founded something called the Moral Majority. And the Moral Majority was this like political-ish angle where they would do these things like hold I Love America rallies, and they were really just like big church rallies about how they loved America and how America was for the church, and if you don't love Jesus, you don't love America, things like that. And he argued that separation of church and state was the reason why we had moral problems. And their moral problems were things like the hippie movement, sexual revolution, and et cetera, right? They blame separation of church and state on that stuff, and they want to meld church and state together a little bit. On top of that, you got guys like James Dobson, who had a Focus on the Family radio program. He wasn't overtly political like Falwell and others were, but that's because he was really good at hiding what he wanted. And some of the hidden messages in his radio programs are things like resisting gay rights, bringing prayer back into schools, and like keeping up traditional family norms and things like that. So he straight up like hit a lot of that stuff, and it worked for the most part. So I'll give you about a minute and a half on there, and then we'll move forward. These people, by the way, are like the lady from The Simpsons. Oh Lord, think of the children. That's where these people come from. And this is their origin story, so to speak. About 20 seconds, and we'll move on from the religious right. So let's talk about the clash of ideas that's occurring in the United States during this time. Again, conservatives and liberals are fighting over every little thing, every little concept, every little everything. But affirmative action becomes a big battleground. And affirmative action was this policy where universities and employers and places had to maintain a certain number of jobs or admission spots for minorities. And it would be like, hey, if you're a minority, we have 10 spots for you. Come to our school or come work here and things like that, right? And race was a hiring factor under affirmative action. And there will be, basically, it's the first time where whites can be passed over for a job because they were white and the job was held for minorities. And this is going to come into play in a little bit. So I'll leave this up for about a minute and change, and then we'll move forward. About 35 seconds. All right, let's move forward. So, college I should say admission. College admission scandal. My fault, guys. Some typos in there. I apologize. Alan Bakke, white guy right there pictured, argued that he was being discriminated against by the University of California because he was not allowed to admission because he was white. And the 16 spots remaining were spots that were reserved for minority applicants under affirmative action. And he appealed and went to court, and the Supreme Court will rule that minority quotas by themselves are unconstitutional. This violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Race, however, will not be ruled out as a determining factor. It just cannot be the only determining factor, right? So you can't just be like, oh, you're a minority, you're in. There's got to be more involved in that. Like, oh, you're a minority that has this many grades and who's done this or who filled out this one. Or does that make sense? Like, affirmative action declared unconstitutional on the basis of race alone. But universities and sometimes employers do still have ways to try to ensure that they have a diverse group of people working for them, for the most part. So if there are no questions, I'll give you about a minute and a half, and then we'll move on. All right, let's go to move forward. So key point number 3, last key point of the day, public confidence and trust in the government's ability to solve social and economic problems will decline in the 1970s. This is in part due to economic challenges, foreign policy struggles like losing in Vietnam, but also political scandal. We will talk about the political scandal in just a second. So I'll give you about a minute and a half for that slide, and then we will move on and talk about some of the struggles politically and why people kind of lost faith in the form of government or the government that was in power during the time. About 30 seconds. All right. So let's talk about the recession that happened in the 1970s. Economic turmoil occurred in part because of, the oil issues and shortages, as well as something called stagflation, which is where the economy is being inflated by printing money and stuff like that. But the economy itself is in a state of stagnation, meaning that it is stagnant, meaning that it is not moving, it is not growing, it is not shrinking. So the economy not moving at all, mixed with inflation happening with the money, leads to stagflation. It is not good. And on top of all of that, Nixon cuts federal spending in the hopes that he'll fix this, and he makes it worse. So people's confidence in their government falls dramatically. This doesn't quite kill their confidence in their government, but it falls dramatically. What will kill the confidence in the government, we'll talk about on the next slide after a minute and a half. All right. So we got a few things to talk about here. First, I'm going to show you the slide. Then I'll show you a clip, and then we'll talk about how we're closing out the day. So let's talk about the Watergate scandal. President Nixon will be reelected in 70, and shortly after that election, men that were hired by Nixon's election committee will be caught breaking into the Watergate housing complex, which housed the Democratic Party headquarters. They will be busted attempting to bug phones, right? So they could listen in, planting listening devices, and steal documents as well. So that's bad enough. We found people with ties to the president breaking into the Democratic Party headquarters. To make matters worse, Nixon will deny knowledge of this, and he will, after months of investigation, endorse it. And hold on, guys, what's up? So again, Nixon will deny knowledge of this for months. And then there will be a months-long investigation where people find out not only did he know about it, he wanted it to happen. He endorsed it. He said, hey, go do that. And once people find out that he lied, it's really, really bad times. His impeachment seemed very like it was about to happen. He was about to be impeached. And once that happened, he resigned. Richard Nixon's the only president to resign his post, although he was not impeached, and his vice president who took over immediately pardoned him. But this incident, you can't fire me, I quit. Exactly. It was basically a you can't fire me, I quit situation. And people stopped having faith in their government because of it. People were like, oh, I can't trust this guy. This guy is, not, the government's not trustworthy. And they wanted something new as a result. So I'll give you a quick minute and a half, and then we'll move forward. About a minute on the clock. All right, so before we move on, again, we're going to talk about a quick primary source I want to show you, and then we're going to get into the exit ticket for the day. Get the slides back up. There we go. All right, so check this out. This is a real Nixon interview, obviously. This is during a speech he was giving, an address to the U.S. This is right after they found out that the scandal happened, but before they found out that he wanted to do it.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
President?
Yes, sir.
So that's just a little clip, but I like when we get to see real stuff like that. There's a lot of Nixon videos, right? But again, so I like that one. People got to know their president's a crook. I'm not a crook. Very famous line. You may or may not have heard. Very confident. Oh yeah. Nixon, people really not liked Nixon. Like this was a big scandal. It was a big deal to find out that he kind of broke the law the way he did. He's an interesting guy. People liked him for the most part. He got us out of Vietnam. A lot of people like that, but yeah, I'm not a crook. But stuff like that where he flat out lied to everybody. I didn't do this stuff. I'm an honest fella. I would never do this. Like that's what was getting him in a lot of trouble, right? That's what got Bill Clinton in trouble. It's not that what he did, it's how he lied about it. Right? As a president, it was at least really important to never lie to the people. And like when people lied, when the president lied to people, it was a big deal. But your exit ticket's really straightforward. It's only one question. You got about 10 minutes to do it, which is plenty of time. But I want you to be specific and write, like actually write, like make sure you identify the three things, but then explain them, actually explain them. And I want you to connect how the change in society we talked about today, right? That conservatism change can still be felt today. And if you're struggling to find three specific examples from today, you can add examples in from the past. Just make sure that you have at least 1 to 2 that are from modern day. If you have questions about this assignment, this exit ticket,